Some immediate snap opinions, and I thought a good place to start, because I saw most of you at the screening this morning. Jason, I don't think you were there, but the Skolimowski film, Essential Killing, which had a giant line at the press screening, a Danny Boyle-sized line, probably because the prospect of Vincent Gallo as a Taliban, who the credits inform us his name Mohammed, was too good to pass up. He also won Best Actor at the Venice Film Festival, and it's an example of a film that, despite playing in Venice, doesn't have the litany of Cannes reviews attached to it. So it wasn't totally pre-chewed. Most of the people there, including some people who I know see everything before it's even released, hadn't seen this yet. So these are going to be very fresh opinions on the Skolimowski film. Maybe we can, Bob, were you there?
Well, I have a comment on not on the film, but on the gross mismanagement by TIFF of the press screening.
They put it in a very small theater.
I know. I really, this has to be on the record. It was outrageous today what they did with the planning of the screening of this film, because there were films of far, far less intense interest that were slotted very close in the time slot to the screening of Essential Killing that were in theaters 4 times as big as the theater in which, obviously a film with tremendous interest going into the festival, they slotted into a 130-seat room. And there were a huge number of people that weren't able to see it, including me. So, bad on TIFF for, they really flipped it on the P&I planning department.
Well, moving on to a few of the 130 people who were lucky enough to be in the screening, we showed up early. Can we sort of get maybe a couple of opinions on the movie? It strikes me as one of the movies that might be worth talking about in some detail at the festival. I've been thinking about it all afternoon, even while doing other things and other interviews. Fernando, we're going to start with you.
Well,
because you're the man.
Thank you. I'm not there.
You are.
He's not.
But thank you. Somebody agrees with me. Yes, I was very impressed with it by some aspects of it, and I'm waiting for it to kind of ferment in my mind a little bit, because as Karina said, it's important to have a little bit of time to see if your first reaction is wrong or not. But it's very interesting as a movie of inhospitable terrain and just kind of very strange, almost Chaplin-like humor in some parts, and some very sick humor too. So,
hold on, Mr. Huber. Do you want me to just go and?
Sure.
Well, the thing is that when I looked at the P&I schedule, and I noticed, for example, the South Korean film, I think by Kim Jong-un.
I See the Devil.
Yeah, I See the Devil.
I saw
it.
that.
555 seat.
Well, that's a good reason for that, no? I mean, that film, I don't know, the Chase did really well here last year, right?
That was probably a heavy buyer sort of thing too. So
it's a mainstream genre.
Yeah.
Successful director, played one thing.
No, he's coming off a couple of
555 seat.
Well, definitely.
Skolimowski, though?
Yeah. Vincent Gallo. No, there was a lot of there was a lot of attention.
Fans are coming out of the woodwork for this.
Sorry, very nice drunk people.
Keep going. We'll pick it up. Yeah, we'll pick it up.
Yeah, I think that some people are probably more affected by I won't give the exact instance of the sick humor by it than by the some of the violence in it. It's typical, Skolimowski kind of flourish in there. But I don't know, I'm still digesting that movie, and right now it's, I would say 80% positive for me. But we were talking earlier about what an alienating effect the Gallo casting is.
Yeah, you can call it the Gallo effect.
Is anyone interested in talking about the effect that Vincent Gallo, who, he's not the world's pastiest actor, but he's also clearly not Middle Eastern, playing this part? I mean, does anyone...
Well, I mean, what I think is most interesting about the film, and also what is really problematic about it, and I'm undecided in terms of positive and negative, I'm somewhere in the middle, but we get absolutely no sense of who this guy is. All we have to go on is that he's Vincent Gallo. So, you
Which is plenty.
So there's an assumption based on the press notes that he's a Taliban guy, but we don't know how he got there. We don't know, where he's from, what country he's supposed to be from, if he's even actually Muslim.
Is he Johnny Taliban?
No.
Well, I don't know if he's supposed to be like an American Taliban guy. I don't know.
Like John Lynn.
And
Does he
so
have an accent?
No. Well,
He doesn't speak. Spoiler alert, he doesn't speak a
He
single word.
grunts and makes some noises which don't have an identifiable accent.
Well, to give some background to the film, because I don't think anyone else who's watching this will have seen it.
Yes.
It's about, it opens in an undisclosed desert environment, and...
It opens on the set of Team America.
Yeah. Vincent Gallo is captured by American armed forces and then tortured and transported to another anonymous location, this time in the snow, whereupon he accidentally escapes, and the majority of the movie is him sort of on the run. But I agree that you don't give any background to him, but I think that's definitely with the film. The film's very consistent in its near total extraction of just about everything.
Right. Well, it's a film where it's asking you to sort of figure out who he is based on what he does.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that's quite fascinating about the film, I don't know whether in a good or bad way, is that this is a film that's very much about the gritty reality of surviving in the wilderness, and yet it's premised upon like an instant fabrication, which is that we all know the actor who's running around doing this. We know he's not the person he might be, or there's in a way there's almost no point in speculating about who he is, as it's Vincent Gallo doing these crazy things. So on the one hand we have this like completely like gritty detail. On the other hand, it's announced right off the bat, since we don't get into that kind of narrative world where we can get an idea of character or motivation or background. All we're doing is watching not a movie star, but a kind of movie star, doing a host of actions in the middle of a landscape. So it kind of announces its falsity right up front, even while it's being completely down to earth about what's happening.
You called it a stunt film while we were walking out, which I'm not going to go into detail my response.
Not necessarily pejorative. But
no, not necessarily pejorative, but I'd agree that it's kind of a stunt film, and it's one of several kind of survival narratives that have been at TIFF this year. I already wrote at length about Ryan Reynolds in Buried, which is a terrific movie, and then slightly less terrific, but maybe one we can talk about quickly because you wrote about it, is the Danny Boyle movie. I'm not relegating you to only talking about Danny Boyle, but maybe people who've seen 127 Hours, just because it's a big film, can say a little bit about it, and we can move to more esoteric stuff.
Yeah, when I haven't
talk about a film that someone watching this might actually want to see.
Right, and I haven't seen Buried, so I can't. I refer to it in my piece on James Franco as the weird abundance of trapped hot guy movies. But in 127 Hours, I thought it was actually a pretty successful sort of youth-oriented survival story. Like I wouldn't put it, up there with like I don't know, Touching the Void as my favorite of the ilk of the. But yeah, I think it's something that is actually. It's funny because I ran into somebody who was a journalist at a mainstream paper, and it was like, well, people are wondering what the next Slumdog is, and and that's sort of become a sort of weird thing at TIFF. There's always And before there was a next Slumdog, there was a next
American Beauty,
a next American Beauty, or a next Juno, or next Sideways, and that's a big part of the Toronto experience too. Is kind of like, what's that next breakout hit?
Yeah.
And 127 Hours, I think, is a good sort of energetic, fairly captivating commercial entertainment, and it's well acted. As far as one guy in a room acting, it's pretty good.
Except that, in Buried, Cortez has the balls to actually follow through on the conceit of, like, he's in the box and so are you.
Right.
Whereas, Boyle, and I can't even blame him for this because this is just his makeup and as an artist, and I use the word in quotes, is that, he needs to move the camera and the action, as much as possible. So we get flashbacks, we get, hallucinations.
Yeah.
Franco talks to himself on video. But it's certainly better than Slumdog Millionaire was.
But it's interesting because it's kind of like that's something that TIFF always, or the TIFF experience sort of hungers for somehow, is that kind of not quite art house breakout crowd pleaser kind of thing. And I think that there's always a tension by the midway point where if that thing hasn't been discovered yet.